Hey everybody! In today's video, I'm going to do a quick Impressionist style gouache background on some watercolor paper to get the look that you see here on this card. I also will be on the My Sweet Petunia blog today with this adorable new die set from My Favorite Things, so be sure and head over there. I'll include a link. I have a paper plate set up here, and I'm using some ADHESIVE gouache for my background today. You can also see my grocery list on the mat. I got a lot going on this week, so this is just real life. Gouache is a sort of a hybrid product between watercolor and acrylic paint. I don't typically paint with gouache because I like transparent mediums. But what's cool about it is since it has some of the properties of both watercolor and acrylic paint, it can make some fun effects for your backgrounds. So I have a piece of watercolor paper here, and I also have a very wet sea sponge. I like the texture that a sea sponge brings as opposed to a synthetic sponge. And I've also put a little bit of water onto the plate. And you'll see that in some ways this does go down onto wet watercolor paper like watercolor. You'll see it spread out like watercolor does. But the acrylic component of it gives it an opacity that is really nice for layering like I'm going to be doing here. I've chosen one of their neon colors, the neon pink, because I think that always looks so good with orange. And I'm just going to build up a series of colors that layer on top of each other, and then I'm going to sort of blend them into the impressionistic look with a little bit of titanium white. I like the irregularity of this sponge, and I'm just using one small sponge for this whole thing. It's okay if some of the colors mix on the sponge. I'm just sort of folding it over to find a new place. One of the things that I loved about Monet is if you look closely at one of his paintings, you can see hundreds and hundreds of different colors, whereas if you step back from his paintings, you'll see they're dominated by one or two colors, like a purple or a pink, if you're looking at his water lily paintings or the haystacks. But he puts a lot of different colors into his paintings and then softens them down, which is the look I'm going for. So I put the blue on. And because it has that water media property, I can remove some of that and make it a little bit less intense just with a paper towel. And I'm also using the paper towel to apply the titanium white to soften some of the darker areas of this little background. There's another reason that I did this on watercolor paper. Obviously, I'm using a water medium and I'm using water. So that makes sense. But I'm also going to be embossing with a die into this paper. And I've found that that works better with watercolor paper or cotton paper. And so I knew that I wanted to have a watercolor friendly background, and gouache seemed like the perfect thing. This is great because you can get these big sets of this gouache. And one of the things that you need to remember about gouache is you can't save it in a palette like you can watercolor. Watercolor you can re-wet endlessly, but because this has an acrylic component, only squeeze out as much as you're going to use because it won't be usable after that. So it's nice that ADHESIVE has a nice big collection box that you can buy that has a ton of colors in it, and it's a reasonable price. I will have a coupon code for you over on my blog this week, so check that out after you're done here. So once again, I lightened the blue a little bit to make it more harmonious with the other more pastel colors. And you can see I'm using a lot more white than I'm using anything else. And then I go smooth it all out with the white. I wanted to be sure and leave the center with the lightest of colors here, because before embossing this with a die, I am going to be stamping a sentiment right across that middle section. And so I wanted to leave that lighter so there was a little bit more contrast that you'll see in the finished project. This dries very quickly, so it makes for a fun technique you don't have to sit around and wait on. And this is what the background looks like embossed with that beautiful little heart die. Here's what the card looks like in a little less close-up because the embossing is hard to see. This is the nugget tag that I made with the new dies, and this is what the back looks like. It comes with the die so that people can pop out their little treat. So head over to my blog for more information on this, and thanks so much for watching.